Hey friends, are you familiar with the most trusted business network for business executives? It's the C-Suite network. If you're a business of $5 million or greater, and if you're a VP level or higher, then you're invited to join the C-Suite network to connect with your business peers. Go to csuitenetwork.com, that's a c-suitenetwork.com, to learn more about the benefits, meetings, and services exclusive for C-Suite executives like you. Okay, let's do the show. It's time to accelerate. Hey friends, this is Andy. Welcome to episode 487 of Accelerate, the sales podcast of record, where I hold in-depth conversations with today's leading experts in sales, marketing, and leadership 6 days a week. Okay, one of the hardest things a sales leader can do is hire salespeople, and getting it right is so important because getting it wrong can be hugely distracting and costly in terms of lost time and lost opportunities. So, to help you get it right, I've created a short playbook to hiring the right sales candidates for your company. It's called How to Hire a Winning Sales Team, the Sales Leader's Guide, 5-step guide to better sales hiring. And it's free. Just go to accelerate.fm/winning to download your free guide today to how to hire a winning sales team. Again, that's accelerate.fm/winning to get your free copy today. Joining me on the show is Eric Taussig, founder and CEO of Prialto. Prialto helps executives and companies improve their productivity through the application of technology in a global workforce. I mean, I sort of think of this as sort of a managed and curated virtual assistant service. Now, Eric believes that sales reps spend up to 80% of their time on menial, repetitive tasks that could best be done by a virtual assistant or by a VA. And actually, some people believe this is actually where AI is really going to help out salespeople in the future. So, question of the day really is, should sales reps have a VA? I mean, could it be cost justified? Well, I'm interested to talk to Eric about it. So, Eric Taussig, welcome to Accelerate.
Thanks. Great to be here.
almost like you had to think about it for a second. So, yeah, you've been pretty active. You've been making the rounds on podcasts and blogs. I read pretty extensively. You're making the case that everyone needs to have a virtual assistant. And this is a sales show. We got a big sales audience, sales leaders, CEOs, sales professionals. So sales professionals need a assistant as well?
I think almost any sales professional could use an assistant, whether that assistant is in their office or remote out of their office. But yeah, I think salespeople have been asked to put more and more activities on their plate that have nothing to do with selling, and an assistant is a good way to unwind that in a positive way.
All right, well, we're going to unpack that here. I was just laughing because I don't know if you could hear, but I think the thunderstorms passed right over my building where we're recording this. So all right. So tell us a little bit about Prialto. So what was the impetus to start the company, and sort of tell people a little bit about what you do?
Yeah, so simple idea. Basically there are people around the world in places where there's heavy call center activities. A lot of people who are too bright to be answering angry telephone calls all day for Dell Computer or Citibank, and I saw an opportunity to take some of the best people out of those environments and provide them with more meaningful work. It'll be a benefit to them and a benefit to a lot of people that could use their help. So, real simple idea in the beginning, and what I found was that we needed to come to the table with some pretty deep use cases that people had forgotten how to use an assistant.
Because over years, we've just been deprived of those resources and told to do everything ourselves.
Exactly. So just, as technology evolved, the receptionist turned into your voicemail, and the scheduler turned into, your smartphone or some algorithmic solution. And so people have just kind of lost, it used to be that answering your own telephone was, if you were a lawyer or a professional, was like, having a spelling mistake in your resume. That's no longer true. And so people have just forgotten how to use an assistant, and they need a lot of help to get some value from it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that makes sense. I mean, I don't think I ever had a dedicated assistant throughout my entire career. And I was a VP level for a long, long time, as well as owning my own company for 17 years, and yeah, I've had a virtual assistant the last 6 or 7. But yeah, I mean, I think back when I was working in corporate world, I never had a dedicated assistant. I mean,
Right.
that era missed me. I sort of was always a little bit envious watching those Days of Wine and Roses and all those other classic movies from the 50s and 60s where everybody had a secretary.
Right. Mad Men.
Yeah, Mad Men.
How
could I overlook that? So, all right. So when we get back and talking about specifically for sales is, I think I just read it on your website, is one of these statistics that everyone sort of loves to throw around, which was salespeople spend 80% or more of their time on the tactical, i.e. the menial tasks of their role. So I might have a different definition of tactical versus menial, but explain what you mean by menial.
Yeah, and so that's not my favorite word, but there are a lot of kind of routine activities that a salesperson doesn't have to do, and I'm thinking, primarily of that outside, B2B salesperson that's on planes or out of the office, originating a relationship and nurturing that relationship through a transaction. Mm-hmm. And that's where their special contribution lies, is in that relationship building and nurturing. And so, all the activities that lead up to originating that relationship, or some of the mechanical stuff around staying in touch with that relationship, doesn't necessarily have to be done by them. And sometimes it's actually counterproductive for them to do it because they don't do it well. It's just rare there's a lot of critical detail that needs to be done right in the background to help that person nurture those relationships. But it's rare that the relationship person and the detail-oriented person lives in the same person.
It's true. Yeah, no, I think that's a fair assessment. I mean, certainly, I know I embody aspects of both, but yeah, I mean, I'm fairly detail-oriented, but I'm a good relationship person, but given the choice, I'd rather have somebody else handle the details if possible.
Yeah, and it does. You do get those, all-around players, sounds like you are, but it's I would say the exception rather than the rule, and it's more and more the exception over time. So I think that one side of that person sacrifices the other if they try to live in the same personality.
Well, I think one of the things to sort of envision, so if people listening to this, so first of all, we probably have people salivating in sales saying, tell me more, because there's lots of things I'd like to get off my plate. And I think one of the things that you talk about and that, people use virtual assistants when it comes in sort of choosing it, is that, there's a range of activities that they can handle, from things that are a little less sophisticated to things that are actually surprisingly sophisticated in terms of what they do. So how do you sort of manage that range? I mean, does one person handle everything for somebody, or is it, if you have a relationship with somebody, providing a VA to them, that it might be multiple people actually fulfilling that role?
Yeah, so we've tried to balance the benefits of having a deep relationship with a single assistant with the benefits of having a team. So ours is kind of a hybrid model. We try to, as much as possible, keep the interface through one person, even while multiple people might be driving some of those activities behind the scenes.
And the interface is with the VA themselves, or there's an intermediary?
No, with the VA themselves. We always say, the greatest user interface designer in the world will never surpass the user interface that we're most used to, which is another human being.
Right, just talking.
And so that's our UI, and you integrate with them over those things that you're most used to: your telephone, your email, and your instant messaging platform. And then, but those people are working in a team. And that does in one of our wholly managed service centers. So we are what we're not is an out-of-home model. We don't think out-of-home model provides nearly as much value as a service center model for a variety of reasons. But your assistant sits in a cohort And like I said, that does a bunch of good things for you. One, it adds continuity. So, when your assistant's out, there's somebody else that has a fairly deep knowledge of your work as well, so you can still be supported. But it also gives your assistant a cohort of people to problem solve with, so they can ask, their neighbor, the person they're sitting next to, questions to problem solve without having to bug you.
So I imagine these centers are located someplace where there's a fair amount of time shifting involved.
Well, we are global, so we have a center in Latin America and a center in Southeast Asia, and we're adding centers. Because again, the concept is cherry picking the best and the brightest out of these call center operations centers, and so we want to have boutique centers in these areas. So they're around the world, but we operate during U.S. business hours, both East and West and Central.
Got it. So how do you recruit? So you're saying you're going into, so you're basically co-locating where there are concentrations of call centers that are set up by U.S. companies or foreign companies, and so how do you identify people that these high potential people that are wasting their skills just being in a call center?
Yeah, well, nicely. I mean, we recruit the same way that those guys recruit. So we're just the same way you would imagine here in the U.S. going out to recruiting sites and local advertising and paying recruiters. But how do we get the best people? It's a little bit self-selecting because there are a fair number of people that want to come in to work every day and follow a script and do the same thing and just kind of want to know what's expected of them. And then there's another level of person, I don't want to say higher level, but just different, that like to think laterally and problem solve and get bored if they're having to read a script. And so those people that want to problem solve and want to kind of understand North American business culture are the ones that are drawn to our model in the first place.
And so how do you train? Given the range of things that and we're going to get into this a bit, our range of activities that VAs can support people with, specifically in the sales environment, is again, we're just trying to we have a bunch of people listening to the show and then going to their sales manager and saying, look, we need to get an assistant. But how do you train them?
Yeah,
given the broad range of things they could do.
Yeah, so we do have a bunch of upfront training, and then it's a kind of a mentorship program like you would have in so unlike a call center, I mean, if you walk into our office, the infrastructure looks like a call center. Although now we have a little bit more of an open architecture than most call centers. But there's people on phones, people on headsets, but the behavior will look more like a professional services organization. So people are standing up, walking over to each other's desks, problem solving, and it is in a pyramid. So people that do really well are promoted and become the mentors to the newer people. And so it is a mentorship kind of program, just like kind of model the same way that if you were joining financial services or a consulting firm. Yeah.
And so how do you match a VA with a particular client? So let's say I wanted to come to you and say, look, I need, I've got these set of things I need to do or I need done for me. How do we find the right person?
Yeah. So, we like to stand behind kind of the quality benchmark of all of our people, as you can imagine. And so we kind of ask you to trust us. About 5% of the time, we end up switching out an assistant. So that's a nice thing, again, about our in-center model is it's a managed service. And and we think we're more than the sum of the individuals. We are able to switch people out and pretty seamlessly. We document all the stuff that we're doing for you. So retraining is remarkably easy and painless for the end user. What's interesting is that when the relationship doesn't work, it's we find that it's rare that it's because of the actual skill set. It's more about chemistry, where because what we'll find is somebody else would have really liked assistant and said they did all these things great, whereas somebody else will say they all did the same things badly. And when we dig into it, we find that there were just a couple of bumps early on that made trust or communication break down. And it could get solved over a long period of time, but it's just better to just, start over and start fresh.
Got it. And how do you know your work's getting done? I mean, that's always the thing. I have an assistant. I said worked with me for a long time, but there's still times I feel like there's more checking in than there should be. So
yeah, no, absolutely, and that's something we've worked really hard on over the number of years that we've been around, because doing that in your office is hard. Even when the person's sitting next to you, you just don't have time for it. And so, how do you give somebody that visibility in a healthy way when that person's across the world? And some of the marketplaces, labor marketplaces like Upwork, they've provided, they're doing things with webcams and screenshots and that's interesting. But again, as an end user doesn't want to manage that. So yeah, exactly. And so what we have some best practices. You do get a daily summary every day of what we've done for you. And it's actually a daily summary and action plan. So it's serves a few purposes. It lets you know what we've done for you that day, what's outstanding, what questions we need answered to unlock any bottlenecks, and then a chance to rate that service for the day. And another chance to comment. And so we try to limit the amount of management effort from the end user. So we always say, hey, just click, 1 through 5 and, brief comment, and don't worry about that comment being, worded. People really worry, gosh, I don't want to insult this person because, and we say that's our job. That's our job. So the comments come into a centralized place, and we distill those down and communicate that to the person that needs the feedback in a way that they can a positive way that they can digest it.
Well, so let's spend a couple minutes and talk about sort of the range of things because I think for a lot of salespeople, it's like more limited by their imagination than anything else. And I'm a big believer in this concept because. Yeah. We quoted the statistics earlier, 80% are up 80% of time. Even if we were to say that number is 30%, right? Because that's a number you hear a lot. 30 to 35% of a salesperson's day is taken up by things that don't have to do with actually selling. That's still a huge fraction of their time. Let's say you're paying somebody $100,000 a year, or let's say it's 150 fully loaded cost. I mean, that's a lot of money you're spending for someone to do things that don't have anything to do with actually capturing a customer.
Yeah. So what does that work out to on an hourly rate, right? And so, what's happened is you've taken there's some great tools out there with some great benefits, like all the CRM tools. We love Salesforce, but especially in smaller enterprises, the failed implementation of Salesforce is that rate is really high, and it's largely because you've got some people that have a certain amount of success already, and it's extremely hard to change the habits of somebody with even who's been modestly successful, because the trade-off.
Well, it depends on the environment. I agree.
Sure, but
in small companies, if you have somebody who's, oftentimes you see this is a pattern in smaller enterprises. A lot of times the most successful salespeople might be those that were there early. They've got a couple of the big accounts. They're sort of milking things a little bit, and they have no incentive to change.
Yeah, and often one of those salespeople is the founder,
or related to the founder.
Yeah. But if you can get that CRM implemented and working, which really has to do with the correct data getting in a consistent manner, then it gives you a ton of visibility and it's a ton of benefit. And so, but the salesperson should be the consumer of that information. using that information to organize his or her day, to have a sense of where he or she is on plan, and not the person burdened with, kind of having to do the data entry. So again, it's like, forcing, $10 an hour work on a, $100 an hour person just doesn't make a lot of sense.
And yet there's a lot of resistance to changing that from the part of management, because it's seen as an extra expense, because oftentimes I think what happens is, they might free up some time for the salespeople, but then they don't see the results change, which is a whole different issue, which has to do with managing and coaching their people and make sure they got the right people fit for the jobs they have. But it doesn't diminish the fact that they need to get their people more often in the position where they're actually talking to customers.
Yeah, I mean, if the salespeople aren't oversubscribed and you don't feel like you're going to get a higher ROI on them by freeing up some of their day, then it's definitely a tougher sell. What we found, interestingly, is that management can be really interested, and that there actually can be a surprising amount of resistance. That you're saying that the salespeople listening to this are salivating. A certain number are not. Because like all sales tools, ours is an excuse reducer.
Yes.
And so that's we've gotten resistance there.
I'm sure.
What we found is that
salespeople in general aren't fans of transparency.
Right. And so what we found is a good implementation of our service starts with managers who feel like, hey, even a modest ROI, a modest direct ROI is worth it, because, kind of the improvement of lifestyle and culture and all that is. So as long as there's some ROI, they tend to want to do it, and they get that visibility. And then the A players on the team will always love us. They'll always find ways to get even. They're always looking for leverage, and they will get a positive ROI from themselves and the company. But the surprising benefit that's kind of like where the managers end up being really happy is where we learn about the company and the sales process, their unique sales process, their unique offering, and their unique approach from the A players, and we're able to kind of transfer a lot of their habits to the B players via our assistants. And that gets pretty neat.
Via your assistants. Now, how's that happen?
So a lot of times, the A players are being really rigorous about some process,
and using the VA for that.
Or they've been doing it themselves, and then they transfer that to the VA so that they can, learn some other, neat thing that they're doing, and we can then do that on behalf of the B players and kind of raise their game as well. So that's been pretty neat to see. Yeah.
So now we're seeing a sort of first pass in many cases. Now, increasingly, I'm seeing mails from people using, the AI VAs, so Clara and X.AI and what's the other one, Jarvis or something like that. So how does that compare with what Prialto's doing?
Yeah, so so we love technology, and we're going to be.
But I find the Clara thing really annoying.
Yeah, and so here's the thing: is at least so far. And I don't want to sound like a Luddite, and I want to be cognizant of the fact that machine learning is amazing and getting more amazing, as we speak. So far, those solutions can't do the more strategic aspects of scheduling. Now, people are rolling their eyes and going, "What? Scheduling strategic?" Well, here's the thing: is that I believe that the algorithm to really solve scheduling is actually more complex than the driverless car. Because the driverless car can assume that everybody has a fairly equal right to get from point A to point B and make decisions with within that constraint. Scheduling has all sorts of sociology and signaling involved in it. Do I go to their office? Do I offer to go to their office? Do I insist that they come to my office? Is it a deal? Is this a social, just, kind of warming up the relationship, or is this brass tacks? We're going to talk, and therefore you're going to go to a lively, fun restaurant, or is this, brass tacks? We're going to talk about it. We're going to get down to the nuts and bolts of a deal, and we want a quiet space, near a window, that sort of thing.
You're describing something that has human complexity to it.
Pattern recognition, exactly. And so we are always trying to adopt technology to eliminate the kinds of mistakes that human beings will always make, right? Like double booking, something at the same time, scheduling something, that should have been scheduled on Eastern time for Pacific, that sort of thing. The AI solutions are way better at that. They'll never make those mistakes, and our humans, will always make that mistake at some percentage rate. But for that strategic stuff, the pattern that requires pattern recognition, we're still better.
Yeah, but again, that's just you just described a few of the permutations that could exist relative to something where people are making decisions based on a conversation with someone, a tone of their voice. It could be if it's in person, based on the body language. And there are a lot of if-thens that needed to be answered, and some you weren't even aware of I think this reflects in sales in general. And people worry about automation in sales. Certainly there's places for it, and it's working great. I mean, look at what's going on Amazon. I mean, that's, even the B2B space. I mean, there's certain ranges of products that just don't require human intervention anymore. But so many that still do. You still have to, that human thing is really important.
And that's where those relationship guys are actually becoming more important, I think. And it's really consistent with all the literature out there about, how to be relevant in an automated world. I mean, it is those people who have those soft skills. Exactly. And so, because we get this pushback internally at Prialto, like we've had, our PAs, our workers, express some concern, like, is this stuff? And I say, look, if you like coming to work and solving problems and doing the creative stuff, you have nothing to worry about. If you want to come in and just follow a recipe every day, then then you should be a little bit concerned.
Yeah, well, and I think we take that same lesson we apply right to sales. Is if you're more comfortable in sort of the heavily scripted, somewhat automatic, robotic sales type environment, of which we're seeing more and more these days, then that's going to lead down a certain path where perhaps at some point you become so scripted that artificial intelligence buttressed by machine learning over time can learn to do that job as well as you, because you're not adding any value in that regard.
Right.
But to the degree that you maintain your I don't want to call it humanity, but humanness, if you will, and add value through that direction, then you've got a long career ahead of you.
I think so.
All right. So sort of last set of questions is just, I think the basic chunk that you provide is like 55 hours a month, excuse me, of service. That's sort of the base level package. So how do you estimate how much can be done in 55 hours?
So we bring everybody, before we ever ask them to look at an agreement, we bring everybody through a needs analysis process. It's pretty in depth and scope out kind of what we want to do for them in the first few months of working with them. And the concept is we want to identify some activities where you're going to get a highly positive ROI on what you're paying to us in fees, and that's just the starting point. So, and we're always looking for a minimum of that base. We call that a Prialto unit. And so people are surprised with how much we can do in that time. But when you take a step back and think about it, it shouldn't be a surprise, because the activities we're doing, we argue if we're going to do 55 hours of work for you, we're probably going to save you a lot more than that in time. And the reason is these are activities that most executives hem and haw and procrastinate about ever getting to. And when they get to them, they're kind of doing them half awake, or on the phone with a client and doing them, or they're going into a spreadsheet, and then they get distracted, and then they have to come back and figure out where they were in that spreadsheet just to get started again. And so they're often not. They're often spending 2-3 times the number of hours that a person who's really focused on them would do. So that's
it makes sense. I mean, they're focused just on doing just what they need to do for you, and not distracted by other things, which means their productivity should be higher, at least in my estimation. But well, great. Well, so Eric, fantastic talking to you. So tell folks how they can find out more about Prialto and connect with you.
Yeah, awesome. So the best way is just to go to Prialto.com, Prialto.com. We've got phone numbers there. You can call. We've got contact us forms. You can fill out. It's nice if you go there first, because you can learn a little bit about us and kind of answer some questions for yourself and get to know us. But we're really passionate about this stuff. So don't feel like you need to be a buyer to get in touch with us. We love helping folks, and if in doing that you end up signing on and retaining us, that's awesome. But otherwise, we found again and again that we learn a tremendous amount by anyone we come in contact with and help, and so it's always worth our time.
Excellent. Well, good. Well, Eric, thanks again. And friends, thank you for spending this time with me today. Come back, join us again tomorrow. Until then, I'd really appreciate it if you take a second, go to iTunes or wherever you listen to this podcast and subscribe, leave a review. We really appreciate hearing from you, what we could do to make this a better experience for you. So thanks again for joining me. And until next time, this is Andy Paul. Good selling, everyone.